Alright, I'm diving right into this one. To make a tray, you'll need a template and a block of wood. I designed this simple serving tray and printed it on my laser cutter. For the blank, I glued up some maple and a few strips of walnut and cherry as an accent. I said it in my last video, but this template tape is amazing. I may be overdoing it a little bit here, but I don't want this template to move at any point, so better safe than sorry. My blank is about 1 inch thick. I didn't need it to be so much bigger than the template, but that's just poor planning on my part. After securing the template to the blank, I'll also secure the blank to my workbench so it won't move around on me while I carve it out with a router. Let's talk about the bits I'll be using. Now, they're not all necessary, and I'll tell you why in just a second, but first let's put a name to these bits. Starting from left to right, we have a flush trim bit, and this one's a spiral bit. Next we have a bowl bit, which is key to this whole operation. Then there's a plunge flush trim bit, a roundover bit, and lastly we have a 1/8 spiral bit with a guide bushing. For now, I'm not going to talk about the spiral flush trim bit. We'll use that later on to start finishing and shaping the outer circle. Same with the roundover bit, that comes at the end to round over all the edges. For now I want to focus on the bits I'll use to carve out the tray, and that's these 3 bits. Now in theory you only need a bowl bit, but I think I'll have an easier time using the guide bushing and spiral bit first, then remove most of the waste with a straight plunge bit, and finish shaping the tray with the bowl bit. Not only will that keep my bowl bit from dulling too fast, but there's also another key reason. So here's the thing. If you're going to make your own templates, I'd recommend making them 3/4 inches thick. This is another bowl bit I have, and as you can see, if I used a 3/4 inch template, my bearing would ride along the template from the get-go, then keep riding it as I went deeper and deeper. I'll be using this 1/4 inch template though, and as you can see, the bearing is nowhere close to riding the template, and I'd have to get pretty deep before it did. Enter the guide bushing. If you watched my previous video, you'll know all about these by now. But if you've never seen one of these before, they're my new favorite thing. It really opens up ways you can use your router. Allow me to demonstrate. The bushing creates a very small offset from your bit, which means you can follow any template without worrying about damaging it, even really thin templates. Alright, now that you get how it works, let's get on the safety gear and start carving. Trust me, it's going to get messy. With my spiral bit and guide bushing installed, I'll bottom out the router to find my 0, then set the plunge depth to 1/8 for the first pass. I like to do a couple practice rounds to first get a feel for the template. Notice how the router wobbles here? As long as the router has 2 points of contact, there's no issue, but in the middle here it has no support. There's a solution for this that I'll show you in just a minute, but for now, I'll just use the offcut from the template for extra support. Okay, now the fun part. Just fire up the router and plunge the bit. Then go around in a clockwise direction with the guide bushing up against the template. This is what it looks like after the first pass. You can see there's a slight offset from the template, but that'll all be taken care of by the time I'm done. I'll do a pass for all 4 compartments, then plunge a little deeper on the next pass, vacuuming out the sawdust as I go. I only need to go a little over 1/4 inch deep here, and stop. At this point, I can switch to this flush trim plunge bit to start carving out the inside of the tray. But first, remember how the router would wobble and tilt in certain spots? We're going to fix that by making a wide acrylic base for the router. I got this 12 by 12 1/4 inch thick piece of clear acrylic on Amazon, and I'll leave a link down below. What you see here is just protective paper coating. I'll first mark the center of the square, next remove my router's base plate and roughly center it, just like that, and mark the location of the 4 screw holes. It'll be a lot easier if you have a drill press, but I've seen people do this with a cordless drill. I used a 1.5 inch Forstner bit and slowly made my way through, removing the plastic shavings as I went. Once I had the center hole, I switched to a smaller Forstner bit, one that was just a tad wider than my screw heads, and made a really shallow hole. My goal here is to drill just deep enough to countersink the screw head. Once I had the depth dialed in, I did the same thing for the other 3 screw holes, then drilled all the way through the center with a drill bit. Alright, let's go test this out. So removing this paper was probably the most time-consuming part of all. Looks nice though. I freaked out for half a second when the holes didn't line up, but a quarter turn was all it took. I managed not to lose the screws, and once they were in, I was quite pleased with my work. Okay, so back to where we were. I was about to use a flush trim plunge bit next to carve out the waste. I like the bit on the right because it's a really shallow bit, so the bearing will quickly have something to grab onto. Just like before, I'll start with a shallow plunge of 1/8. Just fire up the router and start randomly going around until the bottom is flat. You'll definitely want to vacuum out the chips as you go. This isn't the most powerful router, but as long as I'm taking shallow passes no more than 1/8 at a time, it should be fine. By the way, I have this router template available for purchase on my website, and I'll leave that link down below. You'll notice at this point that we still have that inner lip. The bearing is actually riding along this lip as I plunge deeper. I'm sure you're wondering why I didn't just use the bowl bit at this point, and at one point I stopped and asked myself that same question, but there's a good explanation. The reason is that to use the bowl bit, I need to first make the cavity deep enough so the bearing will be able to ride along the template, hence why I'm using the shallow bit first. Once I've reached about 1/2 inch deep, I can finally switch over to that bowl bit. But first I'll have to hog away the waste on all 3 other compartments. This is a workout, guys. Alright, the cavity is now deep enough for the bit to fit with the bearing up against the template. Now I can progressively plunge pass after pass until I've reached the desired depth. I'm going to make mine about 3/4 inches deep to leave about 1/4 inch of material on the bottom. Now if you plan to make deep bowls, you'll want to look into getting a collet extender so your bit can reach down deep enough. Alright, notice the lip is now gone and we have nice rounded inside corners. The bottom isn't exactly smooth though, so to make sanding a little easier, I picked up these drill sanding attachments at Princess Auto. The set comes with different sizes and different grits too. I was kind of skeptical to be honest, but they actually work pretty well. Way better than hand sanding. With the inside pretty much done, I'm going to cut around the circle next. I'll use my bandsaw for this, but as I always say, if you don't have a bandsaw, you can use a jigsaw. Might not be as fun, but it'll work. You want to cut as close to the template as you can here. Go back if you need to shave off more material, but the goal is to leave less than 1/8 of an inch. At the router table, I'll install my spiral flush trim bit and make sure the bearing lines up with the template. For this operation, I'll be using my starting pin. Using a starting pin when you can makes template routing much safer. I'll start by butting up the circle up against the pin, then ease my way into the bit. Once you're started, you don't have to keep contact with the starting pin. As the name implies, it's just for starting. After that, you can progressively turn and watch the shavings fly. You don't want to force it here and try to do it all in one pass. Go slow without putting too much pressure on the bit, and eventually you'll have a nice smooth circle. At this point, I can finally remove the template, which is easier said than done. I may have gone a little overboard with the template tape. And just a reminder that you can find this template on my website if you're interested. The final step to shaping this serving tray is to round over all the edges with a roundover bit. I did the outside first, then the inside. For the inside, I made sure to start with the bit well away from the edges, then fired up the router, and went around the edges. One tip is to not stay in the corners too long or you'll get burning. I got a tiny bit, but nothing a little sanding can't fix. Speaking of sanding, I'll spare you for most of that, but Let's just say I had to put in a lot of elbow grease. After sanding up to 220 grit, I'll spray it down with water to raise the grain. It also gives us a nice preview of what the final product will look like. Once dry, I'll sand it again with 220 grit until everything feels nice and smooth to the touch. Then vacuum and wipe away any sawdust before applying a generous amount of cutting board oil and letting it really soak in. For the final coat, I used butcher block conditioner, which helps trap in the oil and gives it a smooth, silky feel. Hope you liked the video, and be sure to check out the description below for links to all the router bits and the template. Until next time, thanks for watching.